as I mentioned, bear with my voice today. It is not all the way back. Um, Hopefully it'll be back soon. We're going to talk at length today about open houses. Now, I know some of you have attended the open house training in the past. I've updated it. I had a long meeting, a positive meeting, but a long meeting with Kate and Beth on Friday where we talked about really moving the productivity coaching program from theory into action. So you're going to see a little bit of a shift as the content changes as we go forward, with more how-to and specific tasks that we can be doing to get into more production right away. Instead of talking about what we should be doing, we're going to be actually doing it together. So again, more to come on that as we go forward. Quick reminders and a couple of little bit of housekeeping issues, or details. Tomorrow we have the launch or the start of Family Reunion. There's going to be a virtual showing of it all week. Tomorrow starts at 8:30. You won't want to miss tomorrow. If you can make any of them, you want to be at that one. It kicks off with Gary Keller's vision speech. He talks a lot about the market last year and the market of where we're going forward moving and what you can use to get more business out of that. So he talks at a pretty high level about the economy, both from a real estate standpoint and overall. So you really want to be there if you can. That's going to take the place of our productivity coaching. So we'll be in the training room upstairs tomorrow, most likely. If not that many people come, we may be downstairs. I will be there, so I'll be the one launching it. And then the rest of the week is good stuff too. There are also breakout sessions. So Bronte sent an email to everybody last week. But basically there's stuff that goes on all day. There'll be little gaps here and there. So if you need to get food or get caught up on phone calls and stuff, don't feel like you have to miss a whole work day. But there'll be a lot of good stuff there moving forward. So definitely make it if you can. And then the last Tuesday of every month, and I'll send out reminders for this, but the last Tuesday of every month, our in-person PC group coaching is going to be downstairs in the kitchen. We'll do 30 minutes of role play or practice to prospect, and then you'll do an hour of actual prospecting. So from 9:30 to 10:30 on the last Tuesday of every month, we're going to do actual prospecting. It's it's kind of a double-edged sword here. It's so that I can be at the ALC meeting upstairs, but then at the end of the ALC meeting, I'll peel out a few minutes early and come back downstairs. We'll all regroup and we'll go over like what worked, what didn't work, how it went, that kind of thing, share some success stories. And we're going to do that every month. So it'll be the last Tuesday of every month for the foreseeable future. And we will have a topic each time. So, for example, this month we will likely do a database one or open houses. I haven't decided yet. But if it's an open house thing, and we'll talk more about this as we get into the training today, one of the things or one of the best practices for open houses is to call your database or reach out to your database to invite them to the open house. So let's dive right in. This is a sign that I have up at all the open houses we do. It's one that you should take note of. It's really easy. You can also buy them off of like Etsy or Amazon if you don't feel like making one. But the whole point is you want to set the tone or set the expectations that the people that are showing up to the open house, they should be coming as a buyer or as a seller. Most of the time, they're going to be coming as a buyer or somebody that's just starting the process of looking. So welcome to our open house. Look around, ask questions, see yourself living here, fall in love, make an offer. The big piece here is ask questions and obviously make an offer. But let's talk some statistics about open houses after I move my screen out of the way. All right. So only 2% of all buyers first visited open houses when starting their home search. However, these prospective buyers tend to be more prepared and serious about purchasing homes versus those who start their search online. What this means is that only 2% of all buyers are going to an open house as their first step. Most buyers are starting their process online, which we knew. If you've paid attention at all, you've seen some of this data about people looking at homes online, whether it be a Zillow or a different website like that. However, a substantial 41% of home buyers utilized information from open houses in their home search. So they either attended home value or open houses, or they noticed the open houses themselves and gauged a lot of times what I will use with our buyers is we might do a private showing before the open house. And then I will encourage our clients to go back by the open house before we submit an offer, because the traffic that attends an open house is oftentimes a good indicator of how many offers or how much interest there is in the property. So for example, if I show a house on a Thursday or a Friday and there's an open house on Sunday, and my clients go by the open house and they're there for 30 minutes to an hour and nobody else comes through, we're in a pretty good, strong foothold unless the agent tells me otherwise. Now, if they show up to the open house and there's a constant line out the door and people are coming in and rolling through and there's a lot of positive feedback, that may be an indicator that we need to strengthen our offer. Open house signs have proven effective with 4% of buyers discovering their purchase homes through them, meaning people are driving around and finding open house signs and then dictating or coming to the open house. Now, 4% might sound like a low number. However, this is of the total buyers. So if we have 150,000 buyers buy a home every year in our neighborhood or in our market, 4% of that is still a pretty healthy number. And there's also an underutilized amount of open houses going on in our market, and we'll talk more about that in a second. It's one of the things I teased at the beginning of the call. People or agents are fixated on Saturday, Sunday open houses only. There are a lot of agents that are having success with open houses throughout the week, and that is an opportunity to take market share and to drive these percentages up. Now, this is in my mind most important. This last statistic, open houses also facilitate connections with real estate agents. 5% of buyers found their agents through signs or through open house signs. Another 4% met agents during an open house visit, and 4% of sellers found their listing agents through these events. So that's your neighborhood or your neighbors of the neighborhood are walking through the open house, connecting with the agent's following up, and they're converting them to listings. A lot of why these percentages are so low is because there's a lack of follow-up. You're not necessarily going to convert somebody right away at the open house, although it does happen. You're going to convert more people through the follow-up, and we'll talk about that here later. So what's the purpose of an open house? There are 6 different things that you can gain or use as a purpose from the open house, and these kind of build on each other. So number 1 seems obvious, but it's to market the property. Yes, it's to sell the property, although that's not the primary purpose of an open house. It can happen. But marketing the property is a guaranteed. Obviously, you're allowing the public to come view it, and there's marketing associated around the open house, whether it's the physical signs themselves or social media marketing, which we've already talked about and we will talk about in detail today. More importantly, meet prospective buyers, folks that are walking into the home and interested in buying a house. Notice this does not say meet prospective buyers that don't have an agent. Even if they have an agent, that is still important to you, and we'll talk about why in a little bit. Database ads, this is really important. You're finding people that you can add to the pipeline, their prospective buyers or sellers, and people that you can add to your database and follow up contact wise. Even if they're just looky-loos or neighbors that aren't thinking about selling, they just wanted to see the renovations done, that's still a database contact you can add that you can then set up on a follow-up campaign. Meet neighbors. I have this in bold and in blue here because that is the most important reason in my mind why you do an open house. We'll talk about strategies and how you can take advantage of that in a few slides. And then social media marketing, this is what you make of it. So it's not just posting a picture or a Canva ad saying, I'm doing an open house on Sunday. If you do videos while you're at the house or leading up to it, take what I call show your work evidence or pictures or videos of you door knocking the neighborhood ahead of time, showcasing all the signs you're putting out or while you're prepping the signs to put out. There's a lot of marketing steps that you can do surrounding the open house. And the more you do of that, the busier your open house will be and the more attention you'll get on your social media. And then vendor partnerships. This is a big one. We'll talk about the no open house alone model here in a minute. So let's talk about what house to pick. This is a big one. If you are interested in doing an open house, you have to pick the right property. Now, if you are a listing agent or if you're on a team, you're going to be doing your own listings most likely. However, new to market homes, low inventory neighborhoods, and low to mid-priced homes typically perform the best. The $2 million home in Chesden Landing, albeit beautiful, is not going to have the same traffic that a $375,000 brick rancher does. Think about buyer pool. There are less buyers that are able to afford or want to spend that kind of money on a house. There are a lot more buyers that are able to spend under 400. More importantly, there are different types of buyers, whether it be somebody buying their first home, somebody downsizing, an investor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you want to fish in a bigger barrel which is why we target those lower to mid-priced homes. Same thing with like a mid-range price home. You have people that are downsizing to that. You also have people that are upgrading to that. And then you have some first-time homebuyers that are able to afford 450, 500K, something like that, and they're still buying that mid-priced home. A luxury home in our market is about 700K and up. So we're targeting under that. Now, if you are going to do a luxury open house, we're not necessarily going to talk about this in detail today. There are some different strategies that you want to pull out for a luxury open house. A couple of them would be typically the hours are a little bit longer. You do something as a call to action to get people there, such as you have a vendor that's providing food, or you're doing like a wine and cheese theme, or something broker specific that's going to attract more people to come by, and you're making it more of a true event rather than just an open house. Times to host. This is a big one. We're seeing just as much, and this is more across the Keller Williams network, not necessarily just in our market. Again, I mentioned at the start, I think it's underutilized in our market, and this is an area of opportunity. Monday through Friday open houses. Now, the 5 to 7 time frame is ideally set to catch people when they're getting off of work. However, you can do them at any time. Now, you have to be reasonable that if you're doing a 12 to 2 on a Tuesday, you're probably not going to get the same amount of traffic. However, you will catch more serious people. So you might have a lower quantity, but you might have a higher quality of people that come by the open house. 5 to 7 is key because you're catching those people that are off of work. You're also catching people that might work weekends that can go during the week. Or you might catch folks that are on the way out to dinner or on the way back from dinner. Now you have to market it appropriately. So ideally, you choose the house with 3 to 4 days notice in advance. You're going to see something start popping up in our team meetings where when we do the listing share part of the team meeting, I'm going to chime in and say, are any of the listings available for open houses? Because we want to start taking note of the properties that are available in our market center for open houses on Tuesday, so we can have agents placed by Wednesday to do that open house. And this is theoretically for a Saturday or Sunday open house. If you're doing something during the week, that would be a different conversation with that listing agent. But for example, you could still pick a Monday, Tuesday, pick a property and do a Thursday or Friday open house. If you want to do one earlier in the week, that's totally fine too. We would just communicate with that listing agent ahead of time. Partnership. This is a big one. There is a model in Keller Williams known as the no open house alone model. Let me take a sip of water and then we'll keep going. Hold on. So, if you've been in Kim Giles open house training, you've heard her talk about this before. She likes to have an agent per floor of the property. That is a lot more common in like your 4-story townhouses in the DC area. We don't necessarily have those same type of floor plans. However, it is a good best practice to never do an open house by yourself. Reason number one, it's boring. Reason number two, you give it lowers the guard of people visiting when they see a couple of people that they can have a conversation with. Typically, I recommend matching with somebody that's a little bit different of a personality type than you. It doesn't necessarily have to be male, female. It can just be 2 different personality types. So for example, I have a little bit more high energy than Mike does. If Mike and I are doing an open house together, people are going to gravitate to Mike and people are going to gravitate towards me. And that's ideal that we're strategizing it differently so so we can appeal to all people. There are some folks that are just going to be overwhelmed when they walk in and I go, hey, welcome to the open house, what brings you in today? Versus somebody that's a little bit more reserved or somebody that's a little bit more laid back. Another idea or another strategy or a way that you can co-brand or do an open house with multiple people is to bring in a vendor partner. Now, I always recommended use a vendor that's going to help you sell the house or help you provide value. Now, what I mean by that is do not bring in a contractor that's going to quote on the spot how much it's going to be to renovate the kitchen. That contractor is going to be more concerned with selling their services, and or they're going to scare buyers off because the buyers thought it was going to be 3 or 4 grand to renovate the kitchen and the contractor is telling them 12. So you don't necessarily want to bring in contractors or vendor partners that aren't going to help sell the house. Now, an obvious one and one of my favorites is to partner with a preferred lender because they can quote or give financing ideas on the spot. For example, This property is listed at 350,000. It can likely qualify for first-time homebuyer grants or zero money down options. Here's what that looks like. And they can provide a sample of what the payment would look like, what the cash to close would look like, etc. Now, the lender will also be better versed in the legalese or the disclosures that they have to provide, that it's subject to a credit score and et cetera, loan application, et cetera. They can also talk about renovation loans if applicable, USDA financing if it's in a rural area, et cetera. They should almost always attend the open house with you if you're going to have them co-brand or sponsor the open house. So you want to make sure you give them plenty of notice to do so. This could be a great opportunity for those weekday open houses. Lenders oftentimes do not work weekends unless they're taking pre-approvals or writing offers for your clients. They are not necessarily lead generating over the weekends in the same way that a realtor is. However, during the week, they are. And there are a lot of lenders, especially our preferred ones in our office, that do a lot of 5 to 7 type work appointments or happy hours or events, etc. And this would fall in that category. When you hear open house, I want you to think about it as an event. We'll talk about that in the marketing side in a second. And then there's another model called wow open houses, which is giving them a reason to show up, regardless if they're interested in buying that house or not. Kim talks about this a lot. The point of the open house is to see you or get face to face with you. Yes, the house is there, but the open house is a vehicle to get face to face with your people. That is why we invite our database. It seems a little counterintuitive because some of our database may not be interested in that type of house. And yet you can use it as an excuse for them to come by and see you and catch up on how things are doing. Plus, sometimes it's fun to walk through open houses, even if you're not interested in buying them, especially the nicer ones. You can also offer giveaways, play music, make it appropriate, have food and beverage, find a way to stand out. We used to, in the summer, partner with the Kona Ice Truck and put them out in front of every single open house that we did. It would cost about $500 to $700, depending on the open house and location. And we had a lot more attendees that way, and we were using it again as a way to meet people or add to our database. Yes, a lot of those people that came through came for the Kona Ice and weren't necessarily interested in buying that house. However, we got contacts to add to our database. Now, little caveat here, I always say this every time I bring up something that costs money: lead with revenue. You don't necessarily have to go out and start hiring these vendors to partner with you on open houses if you don't have the money to do so. I recommend partnering with a lender and having them help you. You can easily go to a Costco or a grocery store and get a couple of fruit trays and some cookies and do that for much cheaper than a Kona Ice. Questions, thoughts, comments on the partnership? Cool. All right, let's talk marketing. This is arguably the most important part of the open house. You want to have certain things while you're there. We're going to talk about before the open house marketing here in the next slide. This is a best practice is to create what I call an open house crate or an open house box. Just get a Rubbermaid container. It does not need to be anything fancy. And you will have certain things that are reusable in there. So I will put a big stack of business cards. I'll put a business card holder.
Thank you for calling Zoe RVA Health.
I might put some, I'm going to put a bunch of feedback sheets in there. I'm going to put sign-in sheets in there that are not necessarily tied to that specific house. One second. The last thing that we would add in there, excuse me, is the flyers. Every flyer should contain the following: photos of the house, key details of the home or the neighborhood, your info, and if you're not the listing agent, you must have the listing agent's info on there as well. If you have a preferred lender or a sponsor, include their information on there. Excuse me. Or you can have a call to action. Or you should have a call to action. Now, if you're using a preferred lender and they want to quote financing stuff, I recommend having 2 different sets of flyers. So they would have one that advertises the financing for the property, and you would have one that advertises the other stuff. If you ask your lender to make your open house flyers, it is going to be very branded to them because it has to be because of RESPA regulations. So keep that in mind. You want to have details that are going to have a call to action to you, not just them. albeit I love providing business to our preferred vendors. The point of the open house is for us to get business, not just them. Sign-in sheets. There's two ways to do this. You can do it digitally or you can do it in person.
Hey, Austin, real quick before we move on to that, can you give us examples of call to action for
Yes.
these flyers?
Yes. So most of the time it will be something simple like text, excuse me, text open house to your number, or you can, if you're really techie, you can set up like a QR code to your website or to a landing page. You can also do a text and set up a 5-digit code that would forward to you. But essentially, you're going to say text open house to my number, and I'll be sure to add you to the follow up to let you know what the results of the open house are, or I can tell you what this house sells for. You can also say text the name of the neighborhood to this number, and I'll add you to our follow-up campaign to let you know when anytime something in this neighborhood comes up for sale. That's especially powerful for when it's a neighbor that's curious about selling, or that's just curious about what's going on in the neighborhood. You're essentially getting their permission to add them to your database, and then you follow up with them. We'll talk about another different type of call to action in a minute when we do the before marketing, when you're door knocking. But the whole point is you're giving them something very specific. You're not just handing them a business card and saying, okay, reach out if you need anything. You're saying text this to this, or subscribe to this newsletter by texting blah, 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 texting your name to this number. So make it specific and make it easy to do. You can also do it, like I said, a QR code where you can say, scan this QR code and put in your information, and I'll follow up with you and let you know how the open house goes, or I'll follow up with you and let you know what this house sells for. Those are the most popular. I like the neighborhood one the best, though. Text Windsor Farms to 804-840-3260, and I'll let you know anytime something comes up in the neighborhood for sale, whether it's an open house or not. Sign-in sheets. These can be digital or physical. I will oftentimes have both. The digital side is nice because it will automatically put them into command. There are command videos for how to set up a digital sign-in sheet for open house. You can also see Rachel for that. Some of that may be subject to your service in the area, meaning you have to set up a hotspot for your internet. Unless the seller is willing to give you access to their internet, be cautious there. I like the physical one. The negative to the physical one is sometimes you can't read their handwriting. Now, when you are doing a sign-in sheet, if it is a physical one, typically it will look something like a table or like an Excel sheet, basically with columns and rows that are able to fill in. I will always fill out the first line completely with what I call a dummy or a mock client. Now, don't make it so obvious where you put your information in there. I will pick a friend and I will put their information in there, or I will make it up as I go along. So I might put like Mike Smith, a phone number, mike@smith.gmail.com or whatever. But the reason why you're doing it is it will allow the person, there's something psychological about when you're filling it out that our eyes mirror the line directly above us. So if somebody else has signed in and they did not put their email and they did not answer whether they're working with an agent or not, and they did not put their address, the person below them is going to follow into the exact same thing. They're going to say, oh, they didn't have to fill out their email. I'm not giving you my email. Now, certain personality types may still fill it in completely because they're OCD. However, we want to make it easy and obvious for them by saying, hey, we filled out all this information. That's why it's there. So it's called a dummy client or a mock client. I did it on all of our open houses. Questions on the feedback forms? I'm gonna have no voice by the end of this. I mean, on the sign-in sheet, excuse me. We're about to talk feedback forms. Now, feedback forms are scorecards. I will typically go to the dollar store, and this would be in my open house crate, and buy a bunch of clipboards. And then I will have 5 to 6 of these on each clipboard. The point being is that when somebody walks in the door, I hand them a flyer and I hand them a clipboard. Unless they say I'm just looking. But if a lot of times they will walk in, I'll give you a quote here in a second, And they walk in and I say, welcome to the open house. I'm Austin. Thanks for coming by today. What brings you in? Are you here as a buyer or a seller? The feedback form will have 1 through 5, and it will say condition, price. It'll have a blank with favorite features, and it will say, are you interested, or level of interest 1 through 5. And then it might have an area for like further questions or notes for them to take as they're walking through. And I will encourage them to do this as they're walking through. Now, what I do is I ask them if I can take a picture of their feedback form before they leave. I do not take the form from them because I want them to have a feedback form copy too. So when I follow up, I can say, hey, remember that feedback form I had you fill out? Do you have a few minutes we can talk about it? My seller's really curious about the additional interest, or they're really curious about what people thought of the price. It gives them something to reflect back on that then they will have more likely have a conversation with you instead of saying, oh yeah, the price was fine. We're not interested in hanging up. So you're trying to give them something to have a deeper conversation on. Now they may come back and say, oh, I threw that away. Sorry. That's okay. You can still ask questions from there. But the feedback form gives them prompts or gives them something to be thinking about as they're walking around the house. These do not have to be big. They don't even have to be a full sheet of paper. They can be small, like index card size, and you can get small clipboards to do that too. Go to the Dollar Tree. You don't have to break the bank. And again, those live in your open house crate and you reuse them over and over again. Business cards and takeaways. Obviously, we talked about having a stack of business cards. I will also have something that keeps them or makes our open houses memorable as a takeaway. Most of the time, these are $1 scratch-off tickets because you can buy a bunch of them for pretty cheap and put them in your open house kit and pull out a handful every time you do an open house. If you're on a team or you've already developed your brand, they can also be something branding like bottle openers, keychains, koozies, things like that. Koozies with a couple business cards on the inside are an easy thing for them to grab and keep going. You can also partner with your vendors to get the same things. The point being, it can be a conversation starter. It can also be something to remember you buy. The scratch-off tickets are fun because you get to say, hey, when you win the lottery, you have no excuse but to buy this house. They laugh, and then I make another joke and say, fine, if you don't buy the house, at least share your winnings with me. They laugh again. Now they're sick of me, and they start walking through the open house. Questions on marketing. Let's talk before the open house. Before you even do the open house, all of these things should happen. This is why we ask to pick the property with it 4 days or more in advance. Social media marketing, we talked about this. You want to have Canva ads or Command Design ads that advertise the open house. If you've noticed, KW Metro Center puts them together for you as well. You do not have to make your own, although you should. You should have varying degrees of them, not the same post every time. But you should post something every single day leading up to the open house. I like to do a post and then a share and then a video. And then I'll do it again if there's more days left. But what I mean by that is I will create my own post. I will share the Market Center's post, and then I will do a video about the open house. Typically, the video is going to be a preview of the open house or a video of me door knocking the neighborhood or a quick reel of me putting the open house signs in the yard, something of that nature to showcase the open house. Create an event. This can be a Facebook event or this can be an Eventbrite. This is especially important for brand new listings. It also gives you an easy link to send to your database or to copy and paste into social media. We're not necessarily looking for RSVPs. However, if you have a vendor or you're bringing somebody like Kona Ice or buying food or beverage, this can help you with that. A lot of times people want RSVP, but it makes you look more professional and taking your open houses seriously. It also gives you something tangible that you can go back to the seller, whether you're the listing agent or back to the listing agent if you're just hosting the open house, and say, hey, this is what I do in my open house system. This is one of the tools that you can showcase your seller and say that we are taking it seriously and we're pulling out all the stops to get as many people or eyes interested in the open house as possible. Invite the database. Little caveat here. Don't just send one mass email out to your whole database and say open house 2 to 4 at 123 Main Street. This takes a little bit of time because you're going to make it personal to who you're inviting. This does not necessarily mean you have to send an individual text or an individual call to everybody in your database. However, we talked about this last week. Based on who is in your database, if they are a homeowner, they might get a message from me saying, hey, come by this open house, see me on Sunday from 2 to 4, and let's catch up. Even if you're not interested in the property, I just want to see you face to face. By the way, we're going to have Kona Ice out front, so bring your kids. If they are a home buyer, then you can bring up, hey, we're doing an open house. I know it's not quite exactly what you're looking for, but it's in a great area. Come by and check it out. Or come see the marketing that we have available for open houses, or come by and chat with our lender. I know you haven't had a chance to. He's going to be with me on Sunday. You can see these kind of personalized touches that you're giving based on what category they are. Rhonda, I saw your hand go up. You got a question?
I do. So sometimes there is, I know that these things take time, and I've not had the full on experience of doing the open houses this way because it might pop up like towards the end of the week or like the next day that someone's looking for someone to host an open house. What time frame would you suggest the listing agent to give to someone so that they could appropriately do an open house in this manner?
Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
something that I talked about with Kate and Beth last week in our meeting, and we are making a system for the market center now where it is expected that if you want an open house that weekend, you have to share it on the Tuesday team meeting. That way I can have the agent decided or placed by Wednesday, so then they have Thursday, Friday, preferably Saturday to do a Sunday open house, or they at least have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to do a Saturday open house. So we're working on getting away from exactly what you just mentioned, where people post on a Friday or a Saturday and say, who wants to do an open house this weekend? That's not enough time to strategically market
Right.
the open house. It is doing a disservice to the host. It is doing a disservice to the listing agent and to the seller. And you're quite frankly just wasting everybody's time.
Right.
So if
It's very
somebody
hard to do that. Very hard to
exactly.
do that. Yeah.
Exactly. So if somebody comes to me on a Friday and says, hey, do you have an agent that wants to host an open house this weekend? I will say, sorry, all of my agents have already been placed. We place it on Tuesday, Wednesday. How does the following weekend look if the house is still available? Because we want to, there's a saying in KW, you teach people how to treat you. We want these listing agents to understand that it is not worth it to do an open house with not enough time to do these proper things. Now, I forgot to mention at the start of the training, but this is a better time anyways. In today's email or tomorrow's email, whenever it goes out, when the recording link comes out, you will see 2 attachments as well. There's going to be the open house playbook from Keller Williams, which is a little bit longer. And then you're going to see a 2-page Google document that says best practices for our market center for open houses. The best practices is something that I've created. The playbook is obviously something that Keller Williams created. But that is going to go out to the entire market center. It's not just going to go to you guys. It's not like we're just trying to say, hey, here's what productivity coaching does. Part of the reason for the best practices is we need the listing agents to also understand this, whether their team members or themselves are hosting open houses, or if they're having you guys host open houses. We need to set it up properly where the open houses make sense. This is how we get more results. This is how you sell more houses, and this is how you get more leads from open houses. I mentioned in the email yesterday for advertising today's class, most of this is around a concept called the mega open house, which is set up to make $100K a year or more in gross commission income from selling or from just open houses, which $100K a year in gross commission income in our market is about 25 houses after expenses, et cetera, is all paid for. So that's why in that email I said, hey, here's how you can just do open houses and sell 25 houses a year. You have to do all of these things though. And so to Rhonda's point, if this listing is not ready in time, it doesn't make sense to do an open house that weekend. I'll switch gears a little bit and not blame the listing agent. Sometimes it's the seller's doing. And so we have to have these conversations with the seller. I have one currently who emailed me yesterday and said, we would like to do an open house on March 2nd. What do you think? This house is not even on the market yet. It is an office exclusive. However, they're having the carpet replaced and they're having a bunch of paint done. So I asked them, when are you having the carpet done and when are you having the paint? They said March 1st. I said, well, then no, we cannot do an open house on March 2nd if the work's being done March 1st. A, because there's no guarantee the work is done in one day. B, we have to do the photos after the work is done because it's not going to show right if we don't. And C, we need time to market the open house properly. So I walked them through what that would look like and said, let's look at doing the photos the 3rd or the 4th, on the market the 5th. That gives us 3 to 4 days to network or to advertise the open house and do the open house on the 9th. Now, they have not answered me. However, that is what I would push for. Great question. All right. So when you're inviting the database, you want to make it personal based on what type of client or what potential person they are. I can't read that. Hold on. There's something in the chat. Oh, paint. Oh, yeah. Also allow for the Lynn Ann said also to allow the paint odor to disappear. Correct. There's tricks to that, but that's not for today's training. So good point though. You want to make sure the house is in show condition or is ready to be advertised in its best state for the open house. So when you're inviting it to the database, again, make it applicable to who you're reaching out to. That will also eliminate some of those issues of you sending it to somebody that just bought a house and they're going, why is Mike trying to tell me to come to this open house? I literally closed last week. Now, you may just remove those people altogether. When you're going to send an email to your command contacts, you can click select all, or you can manually go through and select them. You can also filter by tags. There's a lot of different strategies you can use to make sure that problem doesn't exist. Invite your pipeline. This is another one. Now, this is going to be very specific to what they're looking for, if they're looking. Now, if they're a C buyer and they're just thinking about moving and they haven't really had those buyer need conversations, you can invite them to the open house. It doesn't really matter there. If they have told you we're looking for a 4-bed, 2-bath in Glen Allen, don't invite them to the 3-bed, 1-bath in the city of Richmond. If it is close to what they're looking for, but not exact, you can invite them and add language into that invite that says, look, I know this isn't quite the area you're looking in. However, it's a much better price for the size. It may be something worth seeing. If anything, we can catch up a little bit more in person and we can talk about the features that you do or don't like while you're here. Think about it as a free showing and we can get feedback from there. This does not necessarily guarantee that they're going to come, but it does help, and it's an additional touch that you can use for your database and your pipeline. Neighborhood prospect. This is in pink or as highlighted for a reason. This is, in my mind, the most important thing besides putting up signs that you can do for a successful open house. And that is door knock. If you door knock around the open house and invite them to the open house, they will likely show up. Now, I take it one step, or we have taken it one step further for the mega system, and you create what's called the neighbor exclusive hour. If you're doing an open house from 2 to 4, the neighbor exclusive hour is 1 to 2. It is 1 hour prior to the open house starting, where you will advertise for just the neighbors to come by to specifically talk about the neighborhood, what brings them by. Are they just curious about the renovations? Are they thinking about selling themselves and they want to get an idea of what they need to do, etc.? You can have direct, specific conversations with them. When you're door knocking, that is your call to action. Hey, we're having an open house around the corner. I'd love to invite you by. By the way, we have this cool feature. It's called the neighbor exclusive hour. It's 1 hour prior to it starting, where only the neighbors in the Windsor Farms area or whatever neighborhood you're in can come by and can look at the house without being bogged down by the busy traffic. You're also standing out by doing something a little bit different that most people don't offer. Now, kind of a joke, but also some seriousness here. When they come into the door from that 1 to 2 neighbor exclusive, you don't have to prove that they live in the neighborhood. They're not going to know about the neighbor exclusive if they don't live in the neighborhood, because you're going to leave a flyer on their door if you don't talk to them, or you're going to door knock and talk to them and give them a flyer that advertises the neighbor exclusive. You're not necessarily publicly marketing that. That's your call to action to attend when you're door knocking. Now, I have 40 written down here because that is the minimum of doors you should knock. What that means is if I'm at house right here, it's I'm not disappeared. If I'm house here, it's 10 to the left, 10 to the right, and 20 across the street. Now, it's not a perfect science because we don't have gridlock neighborhoods all the time, but it's roundabout 10 to the left of the house, 10 to the right of the house, and 20 across the street. If you're in the bottom of a cul-de-sac, just kind of spread out from there. It's basically the 40 closest homes as a minimum. Now, if something just sold, and this is where you want to do a little bit of homework prior to the open house, but if something just sold 2 houses down, you might skip that one because they're not going to be thinking about selling anytime soon. Or, this is the coaching moment, you can knock on the door and say, hey, I noticed you just bought this house last month. I hope things are going well. I hope you're loving the neighborhood. I'm doing an open house around the corner. How would you like to pick your neighbor? They're like, what do you mean? Like, do you have any friends that you would want to move into the neighborhood with you? Send them to my open house. It's called the Pick Your Neighbor campaign. It's another way of saying it. That can also be a different call to action. Hey, I know how great this neighborhood is. I'm sure you're not thinking about moving anytime soon. I wanted you to know we're doing an open house around the corner. If you have any friends that are thinking about moving or that you'd love to have in your neighborhood with you, send them by my open house. They could also attend the neighbor exclusive hour 1 to 3 or 1 to 2 beforehand. Rhonda said, do you invite to the neighborhood exclusive before the open house or the day of? The day of. So the neighbor exclusive open house is 1 hour prior to the time of your regular open house. Now, I would typically door knock the day before, maybe 2 days before, depending on weather. But typically it's the day before.
Hey, Austin.
Yes.
I know you have a hard time reading, so I'll just ask this question. You're talking about having flyers for the neighbors with the neighbor exclusive. So we're actually creating 2 flyers. One, I'll say, is the general flyer, and then the other one would be just for the neighbors, correct?
Correct. And you're going to need more of the neighbor flyers because you're probably not going to need 40 flyers at the open house. This is a trick we used to do back when the market was crazy, and we would only print 20 flyers, or we would print 15 color, 15 black and white. And our goal was to run out of flyers, because then if we ran out of flyers and somebody came by, we would say, hey, we've actually been super busy. We're busier than we thought we'd be. We ran out of flyers. If you don't mind, write down your email or write down your phone number on the sign-in sheet, and I'll send you a digital copy. Now you have their information. So it's a little trick you can use there too. Now, not everybody's going to agree to that, and I like to still give them something when they walk in. So it's better to be over prepared. But that is a trick to make sure you get their information or get their proper information, because a lot of people like to fib. But yes, you are creating 2 different flyers. One is going to be for neighbors. One is going to be for the open house itself. Use Command Designs or use Canva and make templates. You should have the same flyer every single time, and you just replace it with the details of the property. Same thing with the neighbor exclusive. Typically an open house flyer is going to be like a front and back with more details on it, and the neighbor exclusive is going to be a 1-pager or just a 1-sided that might have a front side picture of the house and then details about what the neighbor exclusive is, or it might say come pick your neighbor real big or something like that.
If you're, I have a question. I'm sorry.
Yes, go ahead.
If you are aware that the neighborhood has a specific like Facebook page or anything like that, is that something you can use or have the
Yes, most neighborhood groups are going to have their own rules, so just make sure you're being aware of those. If you are farming a neighborhood or it's your personal neighborhood, you would likely already know those rules, so that's probably even easier. There's nothing wrong with picking a specific area that you do open houses with regularly so that you can take advantage of those type of things. Just be aware that there are some neighborhood groups that will be against that. Same thing with things like Nextdoor, or what's the other one? Like Ring has
Yeah,
neighborhoods
Ring
too,
has
but
one too.
yeah, any of those type of apps or groups where you can advertise, that's totally fine. I've even seen people do like Angie's List and stuff like that, which is technically not what it's for, but any sort of free marketing and getting more eyes on the property is good. Worst case, they delete your ad and you're out the gate. So, all right. And then last is signs before the open house, which we have a whole slide to talk about signs. Any more questions about this marketing beforehand? Those are all great questions, great points. Cool. All right. So let's talk signs. You have a minimum of 20 signs. Now, the more signs, the better. I like to cause chaos with signs if applicable. When people talk about mega open houses, we used to do a thing where we would cover the front yard of the house in as many signs as we possibly could, and then we'd back out from there because you want people to drive by and be like, geez, they really want us to pay attention to that open house. They really want us to see that. You should vary your sign types. This is jumping ahead a little bit, but some should be generic red arrow like this. Doesn't have to be necessarily a tent sign. It can be the normal H stake. Some should be small little arrows. Some should be big red ones that say Sunday 2 to 4, Saturday 2 to 4, Monday 5 to 7, etc. And then some should be branded either to yourself or to the team or to the listing agent. Now, the branded ones are typically for sale signs that are lead in. You can also use the blue and white for sale signs that point. You don't necessarily have to have the address on the open houses. You want to look at major intersections and then all the turns leading to the open house. So what I do when I put up open house signs is we would put in the GPS of how to get to the property. You go to the property, you put the signs in the front yard, and then you back your way out. You reverse the directions of the GPS. So you go to the first turn, then the next turn, then the next turn, and you put them on all the major turns. Then you can go back through again and double dip. Some houses have multiple ways into the neighborhood, so you want to make sure you're hitting both sides. That's why and how you get to 20 signs pretty quickly. Now, go on Amazon or go to your Lowe's or your Home Depot and buy packs of signs. They can be these red and white basic open house signs. This is part of your investment of being a realtor. However, that's why we say get generic to start. You don't have to go on and make custom branded open house signs that are full of logos. Matter of fact, the red and white ones catch more attention anyways. Then they're interchangeable. If you want to put the time on there, the time and date on there, see Krista after class when she gets back from family reunion because she has a great strategy on how to do so. She took 3M Velcro stickers and made little laminate cards that she can then interchange. So if it's a Saturday, she puts a Saturday sticker on there. Sunday, she puts a Sunday sticker on there. You can also use like packing tape and use dry erase marker and that'll wipe off. It's kind of your preference. Or you can do what I did and just buy double the amount and have half branded for Saturday, half branded for Sunday. The generic ones are what people look for, correct? The red and white are what catches the attention. RAR also has them for sale. They're just a little bit more expensive, but they are kind of cool and you can get them there too. I just like buying in bulk, so that's why I look at like Amazon. You can also Google open house sign packs, and there will probably be other sites that specialize in signs that will sell them to you for pretty cheap. Now, ideally, you will put them out 3 days prior to the open house. 2 days is the minimum. And you want to have maybe 4 to 5 extras in your car, if not more, the day of. So don't put out all of your signs and not have any left over. You want to keep some in the back of your car. 2 reasons why. A, signs go missing, and you want to be able to replace those. B, signs get damaged, and you want to be able to replace those, whether on purpose or by accident. And then C, sometimes when you're going there on the day of the open house, you might realize you missed the turn, or you might realize like an extra sign would look good here on the median, and you can put those out day of. Now, follow HOA guidelines if applicable. There are certain HOAs that will not let you put out open house signs prior to Friday. Some won't let any open house signs go out, so you want to be aware of that. Most of the time, you can ask the seller and they will know. Another trick too is you want to try to avoid public or private property if you can. So don't necessarily put a bunch of signs in somebody's front yard, even though they're on the corner and that's where you turn. I try to aim for street signs and put it directly beneath the street sign because that is most likely county property or an easement. And so the homeowner can't necessarily say anything. If that is not possible, you can knock on the door and ask if it is okay if you put a sign towards the front of their yard or right in front of the curb, like is pictured here. Most of the time, they're going to have no problem with it. If they say no, just move on to the next house and do it there. Questions about signs or anything to add? Mike, I know you do a lot of signs. You got anything to add? Good.
No,
Oh,
yeah, I mean, talking about minimum 20 signs, it really depends on the neighborhood too. Like the last one I was gonna do for you before you got the listing that wouldn't allow an open house or the offer. I
Sold
had
it too
30
fast.
signs out. And
Yeah.
there are two entrances into the place. And it's like at least a half to 3/4 of a mile in to get to that house, right? So, and some not just 90-degree turns, but the road itself kind of curves. So I would put it strategically on the outside of those curves to catch people's eyes. You don't want to go too long before you have an open house, even if there's no turn, because people are going to be looking and going, well, where's this house? Another reason why I do basically a minimum of 30 signs.
Yep.
And yeah, I'll second Krista's awesome idea of doing that laminated thing. It'll take hours to get that done, but in the long run, it's going to save you hours of erasing all that, even if it's the marker that you can easily erase, dry erase. It still takes hours to do that and then to rewrite every single time. So save yourself time, print off, Sunday, print off Saturday, print off 1 to 3, 2 to 4, and cut all that up, laminate it, and get yourself that 3M tape. It's going to save you a lot of time. But yeah, and I do what Austin says. I put it by street signs. I had been with Krista before putting out signs when somebody actually called her because she had some branded ones with her number and said that they don't want her sign in their yard. So luckily they were able to keep it until she could go back and get it from them. But you will run across that. I've had a guy who actually, after my open house, when I was going and picking him up, stopped in his car and berated me for having a sign in his front yard. Yeah, so it happens.
Yep.
But yeah, just do what you do, sit there and take it when someone gets angry and just apologize. But move on with your day. Just get your sign out there. Who cares what they think, honestly? Austin may disagree. You're doing this to try to get yourself business. I could care less if it upsets one homeowner when I put it, 2 feet from the street, which technically is county property. I'm not going to argue with them about it. I'm just going to put it out there. And if they have a problem, they have a problem. I'll collect it and move on. But it's just not worth your time getting upset about it. Just put out your 30 signs and get as many people in there as possible. Aside from the sign though, on the flyer itself, I like to do a little bit more than the 1-page kind of flyer for the open houses when you're door knocking. I do a bifold. So that way I have basically 4 pages and it's smaller than a whole sheet because it folds in half. And I get more pictures, I get more information, and it looks a little bit more professional. So that's what I do. Doesn't take that much longer to create that flyer. And like Austin said, use it as a template and pretty much do the same thing every time. You'll find that you'll kind of upgrade it as you learn and go through the process, you'll make changes. But I like doing the bifold for that. It just stands out a little bit more, I think.
And that's a great point too. And most of the time, if you time it right, you can do your door knocking and your signs around the same time. Obviously, it takes a little bit of time to put out 30 signs, but that's part of your investment. It takes just as much time to pick them up too. So make sure you don't miss them. That is when people get more upset, is when you don't pick the sign up in time or it stays there until Monday. You want to make sure you pick them up when the open house is finished. And like Mike said, you're going to upset some people regardless of, even if you ask and they say yes, they may forget, or the wife may have said yes and the husband's the one that has the issue. It's going to happen. And so if you're marketing your open house correctly, if you make 10 grand on a lead that you get and you sell them a house, you're not going to care about upsetting that homeowner about that open house sign. So there are certain things we have to let just kind of roll off our back, water off the back, and then try to time it where you're doing the door knocking anyways. And then you can ask them, hey, your house would actually be a great property for me to put a sign in the yard because it leads kind of directly to wherever the open house is. Is it okay if I put one kind of towards the street? It's not really going to be in your yard, but I just wanted you to have a heads up before I did it. 9 times out of 10, they're gonna be like, yeah, dude, that's no problem. Or they may say like, absolutely not, don't put it there. So now you're saving yourself the trouble of getting bust at later. That is the nice thing about these A-frame tent signs, as they don't actually physically go in the ground. Now, an H stake is not doing any damage to the ground. So no matter what somebody tells you, you're not actually hurting anything unless you were to hit a sprinkler head. And if you would, the sign's going to break before the sprinkler head does anyways. They don't go in the ground that deep. So don't let anybody try to disarm you or discredit you based on your signs doing damage to their property. It's not going to. All right. Get ready to host. This is somewhat important as well. You want to make sure you're arriving at least 30 minutes prior to the start of the open house. Now, if you're doing a neighbor exclusive, that's 30 minutes prior to the neighbor exclusive starting. So if you're doing a 2 to 4 open house, the neighbor exclusive is 1 to 2. You got to get there at 12:30. You want to make sure the seller's aware of you getting there at 12:30. Don't just show up on somebody. On all of our listings, if we're doing an open house, I explained that to them. I said, look, we're going to start. The open house is from 1 to 4. I will say that 1 to 2 is for neighbors, 2 to 4 is the open house. So when you see the signs, it says 2 to 4. We're really starting an hour earlier. Our agent will likely arrive between 12:30 and 12:40. You don't have to leave right away, but please be aware that you're going to have to leave in the next few minutes. When you get there, turn on all the lights, open all the blinds and the curtains to show off the natural light that's coming in, unlock all of the doors. The reason why is you don't want somebody fiddling with an outside door trying to get in or get out to see the backyard to the point where they just move on. More importantly, you don't want somebody opening it, walking out, shutting it behind them, and getting locked out. And then they just leave the open house, or they don't take the time to walk back around and come back in. They just end up leaving. It happens time and time again. So you want to check to make sure that if somebody goes out the back door, they're going to be able to come back in and not be locked out. Same thing with the garage, etc. Now be aware if you've unlocked any of the doors, you want to make sure you go back and lock them at the end of the open house. Part of why you get there 30 minutes early as well is it's a great opportunity to do a video tour of the house or a quick little breeze through for social media. And you can also post another call to action or a reminder that you're hosting that open house. So I like to do selfie mode where I'll say, hey, I'm hosting 123 Main Street. Remember, it's 2 to 4 today. You won't want to miss this kitchen. They just redid everything. Stop by and see me. Even if you're not thinking about buying or selling, I'd love to catch up with you. By the way, we have Kona Ice Truck out front. All right, where'd my little mouse go? There it is. No, I do not open the big garage door. I want people coming in through the front door, but I open the door that goes from the house to the garage. All right, how to host. This is important. We've had some feedback recently from sellers about agents not hosting it correctly. I know we're a few minutes over. We're going to be done here in a second. You want to stand and greet all the visitors. You don't want to necessarily sit down if you can help it. You want to be ready for people to come in. If people are there at the house, especially if you are by yourself or if you're just with a lender, you want to be able to walk around and be available to answer questions while also staying within earshot or eye shot of the door to where you can greet people as they come in. You can come back down the stairs or you can walk from the kitchen to the front door and introduce yourself. When somebody walks in, that's the first thing you should do. Hi, I'm Austin. Hand them a flyer, show them where the sign-in sheet is, grab a feedback form to hand to them, give them one of the takeaways or a scratch-off ticket. A couple of different questions you can ask when they get there. What brings you in today? Are you here as a buyer or a seller is my favorite. You're giving them the option of one or the other. Now, if they're there for the neighbor exclusive open house or open hour, you may just say what brings you in today. Excuse me. Remain available. We just mentioned that. And then this is a big one too. You can also partner with other agents. We have a lot of agents that are ready to shadow. So they can be a good partner where they can be in charge of greeting people. And you are the one that's available to answer questions about the property and engage in further conversations. If you are not necessarily with somebody that's shadowing and you want to partner with an agent that is maybe equally as apt as you are, you can alternate as people walk in. Sometimes groups walk in at the same time. So you grab a group, they grab a group. It should not be a competition. The point there is for everybody to get better at doing open houses. And if you have marketed it properly, there will be plenty of business to go around. Last thing, the money is in the follow-up. We mentioned this at the start of the call. This is probably the most important part. Leads are not converted at the open house. Occasionally they are, but that is not the norm. The norm is you convert them in the follow-up. I set a routine where it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday following the open house. If this is a Saturday or Sunday open house. If it's a weekday, you would just essentially follow the next 3 days. The next day after the open house, I always call all visitors and thank them for coming, even if they have an agent. If they have an agent, I will mention, hey, I noticed you circled that you have an agent on the sheet. Do you mind sharing their contact info with me so I can follow up and thank them for sending their people by and see if they have any questions or if they have any thing that I can answer. You want to connect with other agents. It also establishes a little bit of trust and credibility for yourself, especially as a newer agent. If I am a buyer's agent and my buyer goes by an open house and I get a call from the host of that open house or a text from the host of the open house saying, hey, your folks came by, just wanted to reach out to make sure you guys didn't have any other questions or further interest. Let me know if I can help with anything. That's kudos or brownie points in my book, both for the agent and it tells me that my buyers are doing what I coach them to and telling people that they have an agent and giving them my information. That's what they should be doing. If you send buyers by an open house, you don't necessarily have to attend with them. Make sure they're giving your business card or giving your name out when they tell them they have an agent. Ask about feedback on what they thought of the open house. Provide feedback on how the open house went or what is going on with that property, especially to the neighbors. Hey, John, I don't know if you remember me. I knocked on your door last week. We talked briefly about the house at 123 Main Street. We ended up having 25 people come through. It was a really busy open house. We got multiple offers that ended up selling. Let me know if there's any other things I can do to help. I think you're in prime position now where your value is going to continue to grow. It doesn't have to be very business hungry or I need you to call me to sell your house right now. If you give them the right amount of information, they're going to understand that it's a good time to sell. Add everyone to the database. Now, if they have an agent, you don't necessarily have to add them to the database. However, quick caveat here. Sometimes you say, hey, you mentioned you circled that you had an agent. Do you mind sharing their contact information with me so I can follow up with them? Oh, yeah, it's yeah, I think the guy's name was John. I don't really remember. You get that response, add them to the database and follow up with them. They don't actually have an agent. Notice how I did not say, who's your agent? Did you sign anything? That is a turnoff point. Although it is key if they sign anything or not, you don't necessarily need to pry that hard. Now, if they start asking you questions about you showing them other property or about you exposing them to more inventory or setting them up on drip campaigns, etc., then you might need to ask if they've signed anything with another agent because you don't want to have a conflict of interest, but that's different. We will talk in one of our group coaching sessions about more scripts you can use when you're at the open house and when you're following up. So make sure you attend that. It will probably be next week. Smart plans. These are what you're going to tag or add the smart plans to the folks to make sure you follow up with them. If they're a first-time home buyer, this is a first-time home buyer smart plan. If they're a neighbor and they're thinking about selling or a home value smart plan, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to depend on who they are. And then door knock again. This is a step that almost nobody takes. And if you really want to make your neighbor exclusive open houses work, you can circle back and door knock again on the same doors. Taking one step further, if you are farming a neighborhood or you are doing open houses in the same neighborhoods, this is especially powerful because you're starting to establish yourself as the neighbor expert, the neighborhood expert. So they're going to continue to say, like, that Mike guy knocks on my door every Friday, and if he doesn't leave me alone, I'm just going to call him to sell my house so he doesn't know where I live anymore. That's the point of it. Cool. Questions, thoughts, comments, concerns on open houses before we get out of here? Awesome. Thanks for being here. Thanks for bearing with my voice. I appreciate all the feedback and the input as always. You'll get a recording email with the open house playbook and with the best practices PDF. Remember, we want to be tracking the number of conversations you're having daily, the number of people you're adding to the database, the appointments you're setting and holding, and the agreements written. I'm going to show you real quickly what my tracker looks like. It's an Excel sheet. It's called the Weekly Power Tracker that I made. Their name, call, text, message. Where are they from source-wise? Why did I call them or why did I see them? Did I add somebody to the database? And did I set an appointment? Don't worry about the Google review text. That's something different. But it's very easy. I just come on down through here and I keep adding. You can see where there's different past weeks. Now notice some weeks there's a lot of text. That's okay. Now people only go on, and then I have an overall tracker where I can see how many I've done. So since the start of the year, this is how many contacts, this is how many appointments we've gone on, or I've gone on, this is how many agreements under contract, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, people only go on the weekly power tracker if I have a conversation. So if I text somebody, they don't answer me, they don't go on that sheet. Those are conversations. So that's what we want to be tracking. And they're only about real estate. If I talk to somebody about something not real estate related, they don't go on the sheet either. So okay, that's it. I know we went over by a few, so I appreciate you guys bearing with me and sticking around to the end. I will see hopefully everyone tomorrow in the office for family reunion. Remember that starts at 8:30, not 9. So if you can get there a little bit earlier, that's great. I know some of you deal with kid drop off, etc. beforehand, so just get there when you can. We're gonna have coffee and snacks, so don't feel like you need to caffeinate ahead of time. Obviously, our coffee makers are not the best, so if you want to bring coffee, you for yourself, do that too. But I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you.